Well, hey, Rainier View Online, you might be wondering, wait a minute, didn't I just see this guy last week wearing the exact same thing? And you are correct, because we are recording early in advance for Labor Day weekend, and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to do an outfit change. I'm just going to admit it right out here. So my name is Joe. I'm one of the pastors here at Rainier View Christian Church. So excited to be here with you today. I hope you're enjoying this extended weekend. About a couple weeks ago, I did take a staycation, and I got to go to Mount Rainier National Park, and I went hiking. Now, I'll be honest with you all. I'm not really a nature person, and hiking isn't usually my thing, but that day, it was actually enjoyable. It was peaceful, it was quiet, trees all around, hills in the distance, marmots popping in and out of the rocks. At one point, though, I did stop myself and just looked around, and of course it struck me because I had to write a sermon. You know, the marmots don't get it wrong. They do exactly what they were created to do. They scurry, they eat, they whistle their little warning calls. And the trees do the exact same thing as well. They're standing, they're growing, they're pointing upwards, the hills and skies, everything around me, in fact, doing just what God made them to do. But then I looked at myself, I looked at my wife, I looked at everyone that was walking, and I realized, wait, for us, but me, I don't always do that. And we don't always do that, because here's the thing. I wasn't just made to exist. I was made to glorify God. And you were too. And even more than that, we were all made to reflect God's image to each other. Out of everything God created, only humans are said to be made in his image in the book of Genesis. The mountains and oceans can tell us something about God, yes. Marmots and tigers and bears can point to his creativity and strength, but only you and I were created to actually show the world what God is like. We are created to show that God is loving and kind and just and forgiving and faithful and generous. But here's the problem. You don't always live that way. Okay, I'll point to myself too. I don't always live that way. We don't always live that way. Sin messed it up. What God intended got broken, and instead of reflecting him, our instincts often pull us the other way. It pulls us toward anger and selfishness and keeping score and closing our hearts. And if I just follow my instincts, if I naturally do what I just do, what comes out isn't the image of God. It's me chasing my own security, identity, or anxieties. And at best, I end up giving a broken, half-hearted kind of love when it's convenient for me and it drives everyone I know up the wall, including Crystal behind this camera. But Jesus shows us another way. He shows us what it looks like to be human the way God intended. He shows us how to love, to forgive, and to serve. To not live out of our broken instincts, but out of God's Spirit. And there's many examples where Jesus shows this in the scriptures, but I want to just pick out one story for today. And this was a story that we actually reviewed together during the Vacation Bible Study School. We call it Very Best Summer. I just misbranded. Yeah, I'm so sorry. But anyways, during Very Best Summer, we went that. Should I edit that? Nah? Okay, we're going to move on. So we went over one of those stories. So I'm going to go ahead and read that for you this morning, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. John chapter 13, we're going to start at verse 1, and then we'll go all the way to verse 20, and we'll go ahead and put it on the screen for you. So here's what it says. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things in his hand and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." And Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." And Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." And Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason, he said, not all of you are clean. After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their masters, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. I am not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but it is to fulfill the scripture. The one who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I tell you this now before it occurs, so that when it does occur, you may believe that I am he. Very truly, I tell you, whoever receives one whom I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me. All right, so you may have heard this story before of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. And if you've heard this story before, you may have heard about how this is such a big deal that this happened, because we all may have heard about how it's usually the job of the servant of the house to wash the feet of the guests, and it was never in the position of the rabbi or the teacher of the master to be doing that kind of work. And specifically, what's interesting about this passage is that it takes place at mealtime. And you might have heard me say something about this before, but mealtime in the Greco-Roman era wasn't just some time you got to chill and hang out, but oftentimes dinner parties were ways that people figured out where they ranked in society. And so what parties you were invited to and where you sat at the table and your role really mattered. Dinner time was an opportunity to move up in society or be pushed down in society. And that's why when Jesus' disciples gather together and they're here at the table of the Last Supper, they're not just thinking, oh, we're just having a meal with Jesus. They're also thinking, who is the greatest among us? Who's the one Jesus really likes and loves? Who's the one that's going to get promoted to Jesus B? If Jesus is number one, who's going to be number two? If Jesus is A, who's going to be B? This is what they're trying to figure out, and they're all looking at each other, sizing each other up. And it's in the context of that, in the context of the debate over greatness, that Jesus' disciples see Jesus doing something that would not be expected from him. He gets down, and it says in the scriptures, because he loved them, he decided to wash their feet. And then he tells them, like we read, right? What does he say? Do you know what I've done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. The teacher and Lord shouldn't be washing the feet. But then, if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. And so what Jesus is showing here is that if you're going to follow me, if I'm your master, if you want to be great like I am, if you want to be Jesus B to my Jesus A, if you want to be number two to me being number one, here's how you get there. You have to love one another the way I loved you. Now, how many of you would agree it's a whole lot easier to know what Jesus calls us to do here than to actually live it out? The things Jesus modeled for us are simple to name, but they're really costly to practice. And here we see love, but also I'm going to argue here we also see forgiveness. And here we also see Jesus serving us as well. So let's start with love. Jesus shows us a love that isn't defined by feelings or moods. The world says love is this strong emotion. You feel too close to someone, you're drawn to them, you choose them, and that's what love is. But that's not what Jesus demonstrates. Think about it. Think about the setting. I highly doubt Jesus was feeling really great about Judas at this point when Judas decided to betray him. I highly doubt Jesus was feeling delighted about the disciples arguing over who was the greatest at the dinner table. Yet Jesus loved them anyway. Why? because his love wasn't rooted in his feelings or his emotions at the moment. It was rooted in his identity, his calling, and his Father's heart. He stayed open, he elevated others, and he loved when it was hard. Now, what's the opposite of that? What's the opposite of what Jesus just showed us? What is the opposite of love? Most of us would say, well, the opposite is hate. But I think the real opposite of love is indifference. When we close our hearts, when we get numb, when we stop caring because of pain we've experienced or fear or being hurt again, that is indifference. And indifference says to us, protect yourself, don't get involved, don't care too much, think of only you. But that's not Jesus. Jesus didn't preserve himself. He poured himself out, as one of the epistles say. And the only way we can love like that is because he first loved us. 1 John 4 reminds us that perfect love casts out fear. The more his love takes root in us, the less fear drives us and the freer we are to give and receive love. So that's the first thing, is that Jesus shows us love is not a feeling. It's what we choose to do for those who are in our midst. It's what we choose to do for our neighbors. It's what we choose to do for our friends. It's especially what we choose to do for our enemies. Second thing about love that he shows is that love also looks like forgiveness. If anyone had the right to hold a grudge, to keep track, to keep score, it was Jesus. He was perfect. He never wronged anyone. He had every reason to keep a record of wrongs against us, but he didn't. Even as he was betrayed, denied, and abandoned, he chose the way of forgiveness. That's what we remember at the Lord's Supper. Jesus laying down his life not just for our sins against each other, but for our sins against him. Again, 1 John 4, 9 through 12 reminds us that God's love is revealed through Jesus' sacrifice. And if he loved us like that, we are also called to love and forgive one another as well. And then the third aspect Jesus shows us is that we need to serve one another. Jesus didn't just talk about love. He bent down with a towel and did something about it. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the reasons I don't like the outdoors is how dirty you get. And I imagine if you go camping or backpacking or you're sinful like that, your feet are going to get really dirty from the dust and mud and lake water. And it probably feels like they'll never be clean again. But camping dirt, I'm going to assume, or backpacking dirt, has nothing on the feet of those disciples walking through Jerusalem's crowded streets filled with animals and refuse. And yet Jesus does what? He chooses to kneel down, get dirty, and wash. He saw their need, and he met it. So as we come to the end of our time together, I want to ask you this question. Where do you see yourself in this story? Maybe you're like Judas. Your heart is closed. You've already made up your mind. You're unwilling to see Jesus differently. Or maybe you're like Peter, resistant at first, uncomfortable, thinking you know better, but still open enough for Jesus to change you. Or maybe you're like the other disciples, a little confused, still missing the point, but willing to follow along and learn. No matter where you are, Jesus still gets down on his knees to love, forgive, and to serve. And so what that brings us to is that if anyone knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it's a sin for them. And we hear clearly from Jesus what it is we need to do. Our problem isn't knowing. Most of us know this story. Most of us know that Jesus has loved us, whether we're Judas's, whether we're Peter's, whether we're the other disciples. Our struggle is not in the knowing. Our struggle is in living it out. Our humanness pulls us toward our way instead of God's way. But here's the hope. God doesn't just command us to love. He supplies the love. He doesn't just tell us to forgive. He shows us how. He doesn't just call us to serve. He serves us first. So the invitation today is simple. To stay open-hearted. To not grow indifferent, to receive his love, and to pass it on. So here's the next steps I want to give you today. If Jesus has loved us in our state of being Judas's, if Jesus has loved us in our state of being Peter's, if Jesus has loved us in our state of being like those disciples and not really understanding what greatness is, and he loved us first, and he forgave us first, and he has served us first, then the next step for us is to go and to do the same. So here's 3 things I want you to think about. First of all, are there any Judases in your life? Are there any people you know who have wronged you? Any people who you know might hurt you? Any people you'd rather not be around? And if so, what would it look like for you to love them like Jesus today? What would it look like for you to forgive like Jesus forgave them? What would it look like for you to serve them? Or maybe there's a Peter in your life. That's the second thing I want you to ask yourself. Is there a Peter in your life? Someone who just doesn't get it. Someone who's way overconfident. Someone that's just annoying that you have to forgive over and over again. And if so, my question would be, are you willing to forgive the Peters in your life? Are you willing to be patient with the Peters in your life? Are you willing to act like Jesus to the Peters in your life? And then finally, the last question I have is, are there people in your life that have a need and that you need to meet that need as Jesus has met yours? What would it look like for you to be Jesus to the people in your life and for you to serve them? And if it's really easy for you to serve, or if you get prideful in serving, then here's the opposite side of that question. Who do you need to allow to be Jesus to you? Who do you need to allow to let yourself be served by them so that they can be Jesus to you? Because I'll say this, if you are serving but never being served because you think you cannot be served, that's just another form of pride. That's just another way of saying you don't need to receive that kind of grace and goodness as well, but you do. So as we close today, think of those things. Who's the Judas in your life? Who's the Peter in your life? Who are you being Jesus to? Who are you allowing to serve you as Jesus served you? And then go and do likewise. Go and love. Go live it out. Go serve. Go forgive. Go be like Jesus to the world.